Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 27th of December. Today we have some updates, so let's start. And to tell the truth, we can say that at least the first step or the first page of the final battle for Donbass has started. Or to be more precise, I don't know, the final battle of this winter has started, because during the day we received a lot of updates from Bakhmut, a lot of updates from Kupiansk front line. So today we can say that there are two active front lines. The first one is Bakhmut front line, and if we're talking about Bakhmut, this is the front line where the Russians try to attack, try to storm. This is the area where the Russians have initiative, and the second front line is Kupiansk-Liman front line. But to be more precise, Liman front line, where the Ukrainians tries to have some initiative to push and to force the Russians step back. So first, let's start with Liman-Kupiansk front line. Today, during the day, we received updates that Ukrainians, during the previous 24 hours, lost around 70 soldiers and something around 11 armored vehicles. But furthermore, the Ukrainians continue pushing and attacking the Russians in the area, in the vicinity of Chervonopopovka, Kremenaya, and so on. And today, during the day, we got some updates that the Russians were forced to step back from some positions. Later, we got updates that the Russians managed to attack this area, counterattack this area with artillery attack or something like this, and the Ukrainians have a lot of losses. But before I started creating this video, we got the final update that 25th Air Brigade, Air Assault Brigade, Ukrainian Brigade, managed to got some positions, and now these hours, these seconds, in the vicinity of Chervonopopovka, the 25th Brigade tries to establish or develop their bridgehead, their position, their fortifications, and they prepare themselves for upcoming counteroffensive attack from the Russian side. If we're talking about the Russians, they haven't provided a lot of updates about the situation. Mainly, we can understand and project the situation on the basis of logic and the entire mood of Russian media and something like this. So I believe that yes, we can say that Ukrainians managed to achieve some success in the vicinity of Kremenaya, Chervonopopovka. So I believe that the situation became critical, or maybe not critical but very bad for the Russians. So let's wait a little bit and soon we'll see the real situation in this area. Furthermore, if we're talking about this area, I would like to add that the Russians continue doing effective counter-artillery duels. They became pretty successful in these fields, and the Russians are saying that during the previous 24 hours they managed to destroy at least in the vicinity of Nevskaya and Seversk. They managed to destroy two systems of Grad and one system of Uragan. So it's pretty very successful. This is Seversk and this is Nevskaya, and as you can see, both these two positions were created by the Ukrainians just with one purpose: to support the Ukrainian offensive operation in direction of Kremenaya, one from the south, another from the north. If you remember, the Ukrainians tries to attack Kremenaya using the forest, so that's why the artillery system in Seversk attacks Kremenaya and the vicinity of Seversk. That allows the Ukrainians to push very hard in this area. And the same situation in the north, the Ukrainians from Nevskaya attacks the Russian position in the vicinity of Chervonopopovka. That allows the Ukrainians to push with their infantry and mechanized battalions and brigade in direction of Chervonopopovka from the north. So very interesting situation. And if we're talking about Bakhmut, today the Russians reported that they achieved significant success in the vicinity of Solidar and in the vicinity of Yakovlevka. As you can see, there are at least 3 icons. The Ukrainians during the day made few attempts of counter-offensive operation, trying to penetrate and destroy the Russians' offensive orders, but all those attacks were repulsed, and the Russians are saying that as a result of the previous clashes during previous 24 hours, the Ukraine lost around 60 soldiers and something around 10 armored vehicles. But you need to understand that these numbers don't include the number of damage that Wagner's managed to deal to Ukrainian forces during the 20 hours. So we don't have the numbers, the losses of Ukrainians from the Wagner's attack and Wagner's fire. So it's just the numbers of Ukrainian losses as a result of battle with the Russian army, or something like this. If we're talking about Kramatorsk, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked 79th brigade. They attacked the headquarters of 18th brigade, and as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainian lost some forces in Kramatorsk and so on. If we're talking about Solidar, the Russians, as we discussed during the previous videos, during the previous research around Yakovlevka, the Russians started movement along the brushes and forest lines on the north of Solidar, and now they start attacking the Ukrainians in their back from the north in this area. And some sources are saying, as you can see, there are a lot of icons as well in this area. So now the Russians try to move from Yakovlevka in this direction, and now they attack the Ukrainians like from the north. And of course these attacks are very powerful and the Ukrainians, it is very difficult for the Ukrainians to hold their position in the middle part of Solidar, so I believe that they will be forced to step back. Furthermore, today we got the first updates that the Russians were storm Razdulovku. So as you can see, during the week the Russians managed to cross these fields. I'm not sure about tanks and heavy armor heavy vehicles in this area, but anyway, the Ukrainians have their position in this area, and today during the day I believe that the Russians managed to move their tanks, maybe artillery, and now they're storming and attacking Razdulovka. All those attacks by the Ukrainians were all those attacks that the Russians made were repulsed by the Ukrainians, but anyway, as a fact, this is like a new situation, a new geo-object on the map that the Russians try to attack, and we understand the value of this town, because if Razdulovka falls, we understand that entire bridgehead like Solidar, like Veselaya, Vyimka, Ivano-Daryevka, and maybe Seversk bridgehead will be collapsed. Maybe not automatically, but they are going to be a very big risk of being encircled in this area. If we are talking about south of Bakhmut, the Russians are saying that there are very heavy clashes on the east side of Klishchevka. So the Russians try to storm from the south, and if we are talking about east side, we are talking about, I don't know, maybe around the railroad station, but the clashes are very high, and the losses from the Ukrainian side are very high. So I'm not sure what is going to be next, but I believe that the Russians will continue pushing in this area. Now we are moving to the south, and we are moving to, by the way, if you look at the Russian sources map, you see that there is some kind of first update saying that Klishchevka is in the gray zone. So now we can't say that Klishchevka is even under Ukrainian control. We can say that there is a very high chances that this town is already in the gray zone. So this is a very important update because we understand the value. Furthermore, the Russians continue doing effective counter artillery duels in the vicinity of Bakhmut as well. And today, during the day, we got update that the Russians destroy at least 2 artillery systems Akatsiy near Artyomovsk, near Bakhmut. So as you can see, as something new that the Russians managed to add during this period is effective counter artillery duels. If you remember, during the previous months we haven't received a lot of updates about the artillery duels, but these days, I don't know why, I don't know how the Russians managed to do this, how managed to improve this side of their military art, but anyway, we see that they attack the Ukrainian artillery systems, and these duels works in Russian favor. And this is very important because now we're moving to Donetsk, and as you can see, I believe it's third and maybe fourth day in a row when we don't see any any attack over Donetsk. So as you can see, there are no attack at all. So there was somewhat like a single attack in direction of Isynovata, but Isynovata is very close to Novoselovka Drugaya front line. So this is like frontline area where the Russians tries to accumulate their forces to do rotation. So it's obvious that the Ukrainians will try to attack this area. But if we're talking about town itself, there are no icons at all. When we talk about vicinity of Donetsk, we may find at least a few icons that shows that the Ukrainian lost artillery duel, and they lost a lot of artillery system near Donetsk. First of all, in Netailova, it's like this town is located on the northwest from Pervomaisk. The Ukrainians were using this position to attack Donetsk. In Netailova, the Ukrainians lost one artillery system, M777. Then in direction of Krasnogorovka, the Ukrainians lost their artillery system Gvozdika. The Ukrainians used this area to attack Donetsk as well. Furthermore, if we move to the south, in the vicinity of Prichistovka, the Ukrainians lost another artillery system Gvozdika, and in direction of Velika Novoselovka, the Ukrainian lost another artillery system Stab B and howitzers to D20. So if we calculate all losses during the previous 24 hours, if I'm talking about artillery systems, the Ukrainian lost around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, something around 13 artillery system. That's a lot, because you're losing not just artillery system, you're losing sometimes, and I believe in most cases, you're losing an artillery team, and you lose a small depot or warehouse of artillery systems that that team uses to attack their enemy. So as you can see, the Russians changed their focus a little bit during this winter period of war, and they try to attack artillery system because they understand even if they lose this final winter battle for Bakhmut, even if the Russians loses the battle for Kreminna, at least they are able to completely collapse the Ukrainian artillery defense system, and after that, of course, everything is going to be much more easier than we can see right now and these days. But I'm not saying that the Russians are going to use, as you can see, these two front lines. They are like both parties tries to get as much as possible benefits from this situation, and I believe that the Russians step back from Chervonopopovka. That this stepping back is maybe some kind of game, some kind of art, when the Russians try, by stepping back and giving their enemy some position, they try to involve bigger number of Ukrainian forces on this front line, not to give them chances to, or some ideas to move their reserves, let's say, to the south. So they try to create some kind of vision, some kind of illusion that the Ukrainians have success there. And of course, in this case, the Ukrainians won't send their forces from Liman. Furthermore, they will try to reinforce this area from their side. And maybe the same situation we might see near Bakhmut. Maybe the Ukrainians decided to step back and to create some kind of illusion in the vicinity of Razdolovka, Solidar and Yakovlevka, just to force the Russian to move more forces, maybe to decrease the pressure in Klishchievka, like to change their focus in Solidar. So now it's not just the clashes, it's not just the war, it's not just artillery duels. Now we became witnesses of military art, because this is military art. When two armies completely fully loaded attacks each other, and this battle for Bakhmut and battle for Kreminna Svatova will determine the destiny and the progress of the next year of 2023. And of course, both sides want to reduce the army of their opponent, and they want to save their soldiers as much as possible. But if we compare both armies, we see that both sides have a lot of forces. Both sides have a lot of fortifications and trenches all over the front line. But the only benefit that I see from the Russian side during this period is they're more effective in artillery duels, and I believe that this situation might determine the result of this battle. If the Russians continue to be so effective in artillery duels, believe me, maybe not in a week, but in 2 or 3 weeks, the Ukrainian army entire will be collapsed because of lack of artillery systems. Without artillery systems, you can't do anything. Even if you have like 10 times bigger army than your enemy, anyway, you won't be able to do anything without artillery support. And I see that this duel works in Russian favor. We'll see what this war is going to give us, but I believe that to increase the pressure and to increase, because now exactly at this time, exactly at the most important part of the duel in Bakhmut and Svatova Kremnaya. Now it's important to start using something extraordinary, something special. I believe that both sides have surprises for each other, and I believe maybe the Ukrainians don't have, maybe the Russians don't, but if anybody have surprises, I believe that now it's time to show a Christmas surprise or a Christmas miracle to your opponent, and we'll see the next days, I believe, who has something to show. I believe that by the end of this year the Russians will attack one more time Ukraine with missiles, just to increase the pressure, increase the to reduce the Ukrainian morale and to increase the Ukrainian spirit. What the Ukrainians are able to do, to tell the truth, I'm not sure. The only thing that Ukrainians are able to do is to attack the Russians' airports, aircrafts on the territory of Russian Federation, and to send commandos and to start do some kind of explosions on the bases of Russian Federation. So this is the only thing they can do, to destroy bridges on the territory of Russian Federation, to reduce logistics and so on. But anyway, we're going to see the increase of intensivity of these things the next few days before the new year. I believe we're going to see a lot of very interesting updates. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.